Part 1. The apology that never came. My parents begged me to come home for the holidays this year. Not asked. Begged. Multiple calls. Uncharacteristic emojis. We miss you. Family matters more than pride. It'll be different this time. When my mother typed that last sentence, I stared at it until the letters blurred. This time. The phrase people use when they've learned nothing and want you to pretend you did. I said yes anyway. It's embarrassing to admit how much I still wanted the easy version of love that everyone else seems to get by default. I asked for the dates, took the time off, and bought a ticket I couldn't really afford. My brother, 31M, the lifelong golden child, texted cool when he heard and then sent me a thumbs up like I was a DoorDash ETA. 2 days later, he posted a story with a girl I'd never seen. Pretty, poised, the kind of smile you put on your Christmas card if you're trying to look like stability. Caption: Meet C. I double-tapped out of habit. He replied with a champagne emoji and a winky face. It didn't occur to me to be suspicious yet. Background: since Reddit loves context, I-29F was the independent one because it was cheaper for my parents to label me that than help. I got scholarships, worked part-time, took the bus, learned the language of no problem, I can handle it before I learned calculus. Meanwhile, my brother drifted from near miss to second chance to entrepreneurship without ever paying the bill for his own decisions. In photos, we look like siblings. In practice, we were castmates in a play titled He Shines, She Endures. I flew in on a Thursday. The house smelled like cinnamon and lemon cleaner, my mother's two love languages. She squeezed me and said into my hair, "You look tired." I said, "You look the same," and we both pretended that meant well. My dad was quieter than usual, which is saying something, and kept clapping my shoulder like I was a colleague he'd heard good things about. The first real clue arrived with a centerpiece. My mother dragged a plastic bin from the garage and asked if I could help with table decor. "You're always so good with your hands," she said, which is how she compliments me when she needs manual labor. As we arranged greenery and candles, she said, casual as an alibi, "Your brother's bringing his new girlfriend to dinner. We want to make a good impression." There it was, the point. Not reunion. Audience. I said, "What impression do you want to make?" Mom said, "That we're close. That we support each other." She glanced up. "You know how your brother gets nervous about optics." Optics. The word my family uses when truth is inconvenient. I nodded, because nodding is the safest word in a house where agreeing has always been cheaper than being right. Dinner was Saturday. By then I'd run 6 errands and done 2 airport pickups because you know the shortcuts. My brother arrived late with C on his arm and the kind of grin that meant he'd been praised recently. He hugged me like I was an old teammate he didn't remember playing with and said to C, "This is my sister. She's the smart one." I used to like that line. I'm ashamed how much I let it by. C was kind. She asked real questions. She made eye contact. She said she'd heard so much about me, the way people say it when they haven't but want to be polite. I decided to like her on purpose. It felt like a small rebellion, liking the person I was clearly imported to impress. During dinner, my mother slid into a familiar script. "Your brother's doing so well at the dealership," she told C. "He's practically running it." He is not. He's always been a leader. He has always been loud. We're so proud. She turned to me. "And you're in marketing?" I've corrected this exact sentence for 3 years. "Product research," I said. "I build studies to figure out if features make sense before they ship." "Oh right," Mom said, eyes already back on my brother. "So useful." My dad raised his glass. "To family. And to new beginnings." He looked at C. "We hope we'll be seeing a lot of you." It kept going, a gentle avalanche. Stories about my brother that glossed over every dent. "Remember when he organized that charity thing? He posted a flyer. Remember how he helped his cousin move? I drove the truck. Remember when he stayed calm during that crisis? I paid the bill." I felt invisible in a room where I was very specifically on display. C asked me about my childhood. I told one careful story about teaching myself to parallel park in the grocery store lot because my parents were busy and my brother needed the car more. Everyone laughed like it was quirky. C didn't. At dessert, it broke. Mom said, "See, we were just telling your boyfriend how we could always count on him to show up for big moments. When things were tough, he was the anchor." Like when? C asked, genuinely curious. I watched my mother's eyes flicker as she edited history. "Well, when someone had a rough year," she said, tilting her head toward me, "he really talked her through it." Silence. The kind that scrapes. Because the rough year was when I was juggling grad school and a job and a landlord who wouldn't fix the heat. The rough year was when I called my parents crying at 2 a.m. and my mom said, "Don't be dramatic," and my brother texted me a meme about hustle. The anchor was me. It had always been me. C looked between us. "Is that true?" she asked me softly. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I recognized the trap. If I told the truth, I'd be making a scene. If I smiled and nodded, the lie would calcify. I did what I always do when survival and dignity tie. I picked a third option. "I think we remember different things," I said. My brother laughed. "She's sensitive." Everyone waited for me to chuckle along, to be the good sport, the foil, the character actress in his biopic. I set down my fork. "Do you want the honest version?" I asked C. "Please," she said. Mom said my name like a warning. Dad stared at his plate. So I told the smallest truth I could fit into a holiday table, that I had always been asked to make my brother look good, that my parents had invited me home to show we're close, that the proximity cost me more than the plane ticket. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't list all the receipts. I didn't talk about the college fund that turned into a wedding deposit in a different story. I just declined to be the background for once. The look she gave me felt like the first inhale after holding your breath for too long. Not pity. Not shock. Just seeing. My mother stood abruptly. "Well, who wants coffee?" She banged spoons in the drawer like punctuation. My brother squeezed C's hand and said, "Light, don't listen to her. She likes drama." C's eyes cooled. "I like honesty," she said. After dessert, my brother needed fresh air. He took C to the porch. Through the glass I saw him gesturing, charming, narrating. I recognized every move. My mother started quietly crying in the kitchen, her favorite sport. My dad muttered, "Couldn't you let it be a nice night?" I said, "It was never about me having a nice night." When I went to bed, my mother was still clattering dishes. She didn't look up when I said goodnight. In the guest room, I lay awake listening to the heater knock and thought about the sentence that had followed me my whole life, the apology that never came. Not for the specific slights, the missed games, the "she can handle it," the way I was always the asterisk, but for the system. For building a family where love was a performance and I was cast a stagehand. I checked my phone. A text from C. "Thank you for telling the truth." I stared at it until the ceiling blurred, then fell asleep face first in a pillow that smelled like fabric softener and old arguments. Part 2. They didn't invite me home. They hired me for a role. The morning after the dinner, everything was normal with a vengeance. My mother made pancakes she knows I don't eat. My father read the paper with the intense indifference of a man hoping quiet will erase a conversation. My brother and C were going to brunch with friends, which has always been code for keeping optics tidy. Mom asked if I could help put the leaves in the dining table before they left. While I wrestled wood into place, she said, "Casual as chlorine, it would be good if you could post something of the four of you today. People like to see togetherness." "People who?" I asked, though I knew. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. In our town, my family has a brand. It's a normal family with a glossy finish. Church, charity, clean clothes. The brand depends on my brother shining and me not outshining him in ways that make him look dull. The brand depends on the smart daughter who doesn't need anything because need is messy and messy stains. I said no. Not defiantly. Just no. My mother looked like I'd knocked over a statue. She whispered, "I don't know who you've become." "I do," I said. When my brother and C came downstairs, my mother had recovered. She kissed them both like she was sealing envelopes and said, "Have fun. We'll see you at 6. Then she turned to me and smiled the kind of smile that says, "Don't you ruin this for me." They left. The house sighed. Mom followed me into the laundry room and shut the door. "What you did last night was unnecessary." "What I did last night was small," I said. I said one true sentence. You embarrassed your brother, she said. He wants C to see him for who he is. She did, I said. She asked. I answered. You always do this, my mother said, a sentence that means nothing and everything. You make things bigger than they are. I didn't make anything, I said. I stopped pretending. She looked at me like I'd spoken a language she didn't recognize. Your brother has been through so much. I laughed. So have I. She flinched. Not because the sentence was sharp, but because it was symmetrical. Our family can tolerate any amount of pain as long as it isn't distributed equally. At brunch, apparently, things did not go as smoothly as my brother wanted. C texted me again. C, he says you like to compete with him. Me, I like to finish things I start and tell the truth. Does that count? C, he says you're jealous. Me, of what? C, he didn't have a good answer. She added a "can we talk later?" I said yes and then went for a walk because my mother was rearranging the silverware drawer with the aggression of a woman who refuses to be the villain in a story she wrote. I walked past all my old landmarks, the high school where I edited the paper while my brother stole the attention, the field where he scored the last-second goal that I'd practiced pass to him for an hour, the coffee shop where I learned to study with my back to the wall. I stopped in front of the hardware store and looked at the sign. Once, when I was 12, the owner let me pick out any paint color for a hobby project. I chose a bright shade called geranium. My mother said, "That's too loud." We went home with beige. That afternoon, C called. She was in her car, voice low. Was last night normal? What do you mean by normal? I asked. The way your mom talks through you, she said. And your brother edits stories mid-sentence. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I told her a truth I could live with. It's practiced. She exhaled. I asked him why he brought up things he didn't do. He said, it's a vibe. Optics, I said. Right, she said. Optics. I could have unloaded. I could have told her all the anecdotes that stack like bricks. The birthday where my cake was a grocery store sheet and his had a custom topper. The time my scholarship letter was great and his new car was a family achievement. The Thanksgiving when I made the entire meal because Mom wasn't feeling it and everyone thanked my brother for hosting. I didn't. It wasn't about convincing C. It was about deciding what my honesty was for. That night, the 6 o'clock dinner turned into 7:30 because my brother needed to swing by a friend's. My mother set the table with her good china and asked for the third time if I wanted to change into something lighter. I stayed in my sweater on purpose. Dinner began with my father telling a story about my brother's leadership at work. I watched C's jaw stiffen. When my mother said, "Your brother has always been the peacemaker," C's fork paused midair. "Do you think so?" she asked. I stared down at my plate. A small pulse jumped in my neck. My mother said, "Of course." My father nodded. My brother smiled like he was posing for a portrait. C looked at me. "Do you agree?" she said. Silence again. The room did the thing it always does. It dared me to pick a side between peace and truth, as if I hadn't learned the cost of both. I swallowed. "I agree he's very good at telling stories where he wins," I said. My brother set down his glass. "There you go again." "Being accurate?" I said. "Being exhausting," he said. C's eyes flicked to him. She answered the question. My mother stood and began collecting plates that were still half full. "If this is how it's going to be," she said to no one in particular, "we can skip the pie." I felt something given me then. Not a snap. A release. The certainty that I could keep doing this, being the emotional janitor, or I could stop. I looked at my father, who was staring in the direction of a painting like he could peel off the frame and step into it. I looked at my mother, who would rather be tragic than accountable. I looked at my brother, who had never met a mirror he didn't mistake for a window. "I'm leaving tomorrow," I said. My mother sputtered. "You can't. We're going to the service, and there's the cookie exchange and the photo." "I know," I said. "I'm not in them." My brother laughed, short and mean. "You're so dramatic." She whispered, "I'm sorry." I slept badly and packed early, folding my clothes with the syllables of every argument I'd never had. My mother knocked on the guest room door and said, in a voice so sweet it hurt my teeth, "Don't do this." I said, "I already did." She said, I can't forgive you if you leave like this. I said, you don't forgive me when I stay. At the airport, I got one more text from C. Thank you. I think I needed to see it. I replied, I hope you also saw me. Not just the performance. She said she did. On the plane, I wrote a note to myself in my phone, you weren't invited home. You were cast. I stared at it until the words dissolved and felt something like grief, like relief, like a door swinging on hinges that hadn't been oiled in years. Part 3, I left early. Now I'm selfish for refusing to be the family prop. 3 days after I got home, the group chat lit up like it had discovered fuel. My mother sent a carefully worded paragraph about regrettable disruptions and misunderstandings. My father sent a gif of snow. My brother sent a long voice memo that I didn't listen to because I finally learned that nothing helpful happens to my nervous system after his first sentence. Then he posted on Facebook, some people can't let others be happy. Pray for families struggling with jealousy. He tagged no one. He meant me. I didn't respond publicly. I've stopped trying to win arguments where the judge is optics. Instead, I did 3 things. I booked a therapy session. I muted the group chat for a week. I texted my brother directly, do not lie about me on the internet. He replied, you made mom cry. Me, mom cries when the narrative gets interrupted. Him, you weren't invited to pick a fight. Me, correct. Him, then why did you? Me, I told one sentence of truth. He left me on read, the modern version of triumph. In therapy, I tried to explain the feeling of being used as a backdrop. Maria, my therapist, listened the way people listen when they're not calculating their turn to speak. I said, it was like I was a prop that moved on its own. She said, what would it look like if you stopped auditioning? I sat with that. I thought about all the ways I had been rehearsing for a role no one could play well. We came up with a plan so simple it felt like cheating. When my family spoke in optics, I would reply in facts. When they asked me to perform, I would name the request and decline. When they tried to make my boundaries a personal insult, I would repeat them as if we were reading instructions out loud. It took exactly 1 day to test this. Mom called. Your brother says you were cruel to him in front of his girlfriend. Here are the facts, I said. He told a story that erased my work. I answered a question honestly. I did not insult him. I did not raise my voice. She breathed heavily into the phone. You could have let it go. I've been letting it go my whole life, I said. That's how we got here. You're holding a grudge, she said. I'm holding a boundary, I said. She changed tactics. I miss you, she said, and those 3 words used to be the detonator in me. I would rush in with explanations and soothing, auditioning again for a part 1 never get to keep. Not this time. I miss what I never had, I said, not unkindly. Maybe one day we can have it. She hung up. C texted me later that night. He's mad I didn't take his side. I wrote back, you don't have to take mine either. Just take the truth. She said, I'm trying. A week passed. I cooked for myself. I read a book without checking my phone every 8 minutes. I walked to the park and noticed the way the frost turned the grass into sequins. I wrote in a notebook I labeled receipts I keep for me, not to prove anything to anyone else, but to remind myself I wasn't imagining it. Every time I felt the old guilt rise, I wrote down exactly what happened and what I did differently this time. It felt like laying bricks where there had always been a hole. Then karma, quiet, unshowy, did its thing. I ran into an old classmate at the grocery store. He asked about my family in the vague way people do when they want to fish without bait. I said, we're figuring things out. He said, your brother's new girlfriend seems sharp. I said, she is. He said, she asked some interesting questions at trivia night. I smiled into the produce display. I didn't need to know the details. I could imagine them, hearing stories, now thinking to ask, who did the work? Who paid that bill? Who was actually there? A few nights later, my brother texted, did you say something to C? I said, yes. The truth. He sent back 3 laughing emojis and then, hours later, you're sick. I responded, I'm done. I wish I could say that was the moment I felt free. It wasn't. It was a step. Healing is petty in that way. It refuses to be cinematic when you want it to be. But the next morning I woke up without the old dread. I made coffee and it tasted like coffee, not compromise. I realized I'd stopped composing imaginary speeches in the shower. That's how you know the body trusts you again. You run out of rehearsals. C texted me one more time. I see it now. Thank you for not yelling. I wrote, yelling never worked. Then I added, honesty does, eventually. I thought about sending this post to my mother, like an open letter with a bow on it. I won't. The apology might never come, but I'm done leaving the door unlocked just in case. If it arrives one day, it'll have to knock. For now, here are the only 2 sentences I'm stapling to my life. I wasn't invited home. I was cast. I retired from the role. Part 4. The mirror cracks. I thought going low contact would buy peace. Instead, it bought clarity. 2 weeks passed before my mother broke the silence. The text was short. We're having a small dinner for New Year's. You should come. It's time to make things right. Make things right. Not apologize. Never acknowledge. Always reset the stage. I stared at the message until the bubbles stopped moving. Then I wrote, "Right for who?" No reply. Later that evening, I got a call from my father. "Your mother means well," he said. "You could extend an olive branch." I said, "Olive branches are for people who stopped swinging." He sighed. "You've become difficult." I've become honest. That conversation lasted exactly 5 minutes. I hung up shaking, not from fear, from muscle memory. The same reflex that used to make me apologize just for existing in the wrong tone. 3 days later, C called. "They asked me to come to dinner," she said. "But your mom sounded off." Off how? Like she wanted to prove something. I told her the truth. That's the whole show. C hesitated. "Do you want me to go? Do you want to go?" "I kind of want to see what happens when the script falls apart," she said quietly. New Year's came and went. I didn't go. At 9:43 p.m., I got a photo text from my mom. The table, gleaming with candles, my brother and C smiling like a brochure. The caption, "We missed you." 2 days later, C sent me a photo of the same dinner from her phone, a blurry shot of my mother glaring off camera, my brother mid-argument. The caption, "You were right." Turns out, when I removed myself from the stage, the spotlight burned the actors who were left. A week after that, my brother texted me a single word, "Why?" I replied, "Because I'm done pretending absence is cruelty and silence is peace." He didn't respond. But I found out later, he started telling mutual friends that I was unstable and holding on to things. The projection would have stung once. Now it just looked like a cracked mirror, still reflecting, but no longer trustworthy. Part 5. The Reset. Spring came quietly. Therapy was working its slow, unglamorous magic. I learned to name my feelings instead of translating them into chores. I learned to rest without guilt. I learned that boundaries don't make you cold, they make you reachable by people who actually knock. C kept in touch, sometimes just to vent, sometimes to share a meme. She told me she'd broken up with my brother. He said I made him feel small, she texted. I told him I just stopped making you look big. We met for coffee once after that. She looked relieved. I did too. I wanted to say thank you, she said. For not yelling. For letting me see. You don't owe me thanks, I said. You just didn't look away. I spent the next few months focusing on work. My boss noticed. You're sharper lately, she said. Whatever's changed, keep it. For the first time in years, I wasn't performing competence while bleeding underneath. I was just, okay. On my birthday, I didn't hear from my family. Not a text, not a call. I thought it would hurt. Instead, it felt clean. Like a wound that finally stopped itching because it had scarred. That weekend, I hosted my own tiny celebration, 2 friends, a cake I actually liked, a playlist that didn't have to please anyone. Someone toasted to peace. I added to not needing witnesses. Part 6. The ending you can live with. The next holiday season came around faster than I expected. My mother texted a single line. It's Christmas. Can we start over? I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed. Start what, exactly? No response. And that's when I realized I didn't need one. That year, instead of flying home, I volunteered at a local shelter. We served dinner to 60 people who said thank you like they meant it. One older woman squeezed my hand and said, "You've got a good heart, honey. Don't let anyone shrink it." I went home, poured hot chocolate, and played the same carols that used to make me sad. They didn't, this time. Somewhere around midnight, I opened my old photo album, the one with Christmas pictures where I was always a blur in the background. I took out one photo and wrote on the back, "He got the audience. I got the truth." Then I slid it into the fireplace. Watched it curl. Watched it disappear. Because sometimes the apology never comes. Sometimes they never understand. And sometimes, that's freedom. You stop waiting at the door for sorry to show up. You build a new house.